call to order the October 10th meeting of the Cary Town Council. And at this time, I would ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one change to our agenda this evening, the addition of the Cary Band Day proclamation as our first presentation. Is there a motion to adopt the amended agenda?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to recognitions, reports, and presentations. And item number 1 will be the Cary Band Day proclamation. And I'll invite Band Director Chris Foster to meet Councilmember Ken George at the podium for the presentation.
Good to see you. I'm going to take a moment to point of personal privilege here. If I remember correctly, this is the 61st Band Day, but it started in 1958. Happens to coincide with the year that I started in the world. And I wore my band jacket. I don't know which camera's on, but I just wanted you to see the bicentennial 1976 band jacket that I wore in the parade up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, summer of 1976. And I don't know how I've kept it nice these years. I've just not washed it. So don't get too close to me. The letters will wash off. But there was a time when the only thing that people knew about Cary was the band. When you go back to the early 70s, and in 1972, Ruffles and Flourishes magazine recognized the Cary High School Band as the #1 band in America. Wow. Now that may be the first that Cary ever experienced when you go back to a town of 7,000 or 8,000 people. But that was the beginning of a lot, and it's continued much since then. So I wanted to share that with those of you that might not know. And then during the time that I was in the band, we had the opportunity to go to many places, but it was a great experience growing up, and I met the students outside, and it's good seeing you, and glad that you're here. So we've got one of these that's full of whereases, so I'll read this to you. Recognizing November 2nd, 2019 as the 61st Cary Band Day. Whereas the Cary High School Band has proven its musical and marching abilities throughout the years by its continuing achievements of both national and regional recognition for its accomplishments. Whereas members of the Cary High School Band have brought much honor to the town of Cary and its citizens while also maintaining high scholastic aptitude. Whereas music plays an increasing important role in our world today, it is the language of all people and one of the greatest forces in creating peace and harmony. Whereas the band has been a Bands of America regional finalist from 2011 to 2016, as well as a Bands of America Grand National semifinalist in 2011 and again in 2014. From 2016 to 2018, the band was the grand champion of the Cleveland Critique and Competition. The band has also been the grand champion in recent years at the Sanderson High School Capital Cup in Raleigh and the Union Pines Viking Classic. Whereas the band was also proud to represent the town of Cary and Cary High School in the 90th Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in 2016, having been selected out of 150 other bands. Whereas the band has been proud to host for the past 61 years the greatest celebration of marching band and music education excellence in North Carolina. Now, therefore, I, Ken George, former band member, on behalf of Harold Weinbrecht, Jr., Mayor of the town of Cary, North Carolina, and the rest of the Cary Town Council, do hereby proclaim Saturday, November 2nd, 2019, as the 61st Cary Band Day, and urge all citizens of Cary and the surrounding areas to join together in honoring and supporting this long-lasting Cary tradition, proclaimed this 10th day of October 2019. Thank you.
Mr. Foster and band members, I look forward to seeing you on November 2nd. This is the first, I haven't met you yet, so we will meet, and I'm dying to see what kind of exhibition you guys are going to put on November 2nd, so looking forward to it. Thank you for being here. We now move to our next agenda item. It is the presentation of Cybersecurity Month, and I'll invite Information Services Advisory Board member Christy Cook and meet Mayor Pro Tem Lori Bush at the podium for a presentation.
Oh, I'm going to pretend to open it up. Well, it's October, and you know what that means. Besides being National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, it's also October Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So this is the opportunity for me to remind you to do things that I know you'll forget and not do, but it's time for me to remind you to go back to your computers and do a few things to try to be cyber aware. And we know that we're all increasingly very connected, whether it's the device in our pocket, it's the device on our countertop, whether it's the devices that are sitting on the dais here, we are all connected, and both our personal and professional lives are connected to the internet. And with these opportunities that we get from being connected, there are also security challenges. And those security challenges force us to try to protect our resources, protect our data, and make sure that we keep secure. And that's what the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is all about. Now, this NCSAM is a collaborative effort between government and industry to raise cybersecurity awareness and provide information that you can use to protect your personal digital interests. So, whereas internet users and our information infrastructure face an increasing threat of malicious cyber attack, loss of privacy from spyware and malware, and significant financial and personal privacy losses due to identity theft and fraud, we would like you to think about the following phrases this month. Own it, secure it, protect it. Now, own it means use sites that when they come up, they show HTTPS, S stands for secure. That will mean that you're in a more secure environment. Don't shop and bank online on a free Wi-Fi network. What you're doing is sharing your banking information with everyone else who's on that free Wi-Fi network. Secure it means use multi-factor authentication. If you don't know what that means, that's just the opportunity for you to lock down a device by saying you have another device. So sometimes when you go bank online and you're logging in, it'll say, hey, I need you to verify your identity, I'm going to text you. That's what multi-factor authentication is. But it also means, for some of you who don't have it, it means having a password on your phone. So if you can turn your phone on and you don't have to enter a password, I know some of you are like that, that's not a good thing. Add a password so that anyone who, you leave your phone somewhere, anyone who picks up your phone doesn't have access to all your data. And protect it means that you need to keep your information on your Mac or your PC or your devices up to date. Make sure you have the latest and greatest operating system, the latest and greatest security software and web browsers, and also make sure your password isn't maybe your name or password 123. Don't use that one, please. Or your dog's name, or even your address, because people can look all that information up about you. So, whereas town staff and officials understand that internet security is a shared responsibility in which everyone has a critical role to play, raising awareness of cyberspace security not only helps our employees, but also our community at large, and it will also help protect the town's information infrastructure and our citizens. And therefore, I, Lori Bush, on behalf of Harold Weinbrock, the mayor of the town of Cary, and the entire Cary Town Council, I'm pleased to say that we do partner with the United States Department of Homeland Security, the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the National Association of State CIOs, and the North Carolina Local Government Information System, and of course the National Cybersecurity Alliance, to declare October as National Cybersecurity Awareness Month in Cary, and I urge all Cary residents to learn more about cybersecurity and make sure that they put that information into action on today, the 13th day of October. It's not, though.
It's the 10th.
It's the 10th. Oops, sorry. I was just reading the bottom. The 10th of October, 2019. And I'm going to present our ISAB member, Christy Cook.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook, for being here, and thank you for volunteering and all that you do with the ISAB. Okay, our third item is the manager's update, and I'm sure he's got something exciting to tell us.
I sure do. Sure do. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Council. One of our most significant events, and one of my personal favorites, the SAS Championship, is in full swing this week. Get it? Full swing.
Nice.
Oh, that's on par.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're competing with me on the,
I get a whole
Yeah,
one.
that's right. Executive Women's Day was Tuesday, and the Pro-Am finished up today. Regular play begins tomorrow on Food Truck Friday, and the second round of play, as well as the annual 5K race, is Saturday, which is also known as Family Day. And then the finals for the championship are on Sunday. Since its inception in 2001, the SAS Championship is responsible for over $140 million of economic impact for our area and nearly $5 million in donations to local youth education initiatives. Another part of the benefit to the community comes through the tournament's live coverage on the Golf Channel, which reaches more than 200 million homes in 84 countries across the world. We take advantage of the Golf Channel opportunity by airing commercials about Cary as a part of our economic development strategy. This year we have 2 new really amazing commercials, and I'll ask Dale in the control room to roll them now for us. Council, you'll be able to see them on the large monitor there. So roll commercials, please.
In Cary, we believe the place your business chooses to call home should offer more. More opportunities to connect exceptional people with exceptional companies. More healthy activities that nourish the body and mind. More time to unwind and enjoy it all. So come see for yourself what more you can do and be, and find out why world-class companies choose to call Cary home. Find time to unwind in Cary, North Carolina. Our award-winning parks and entertainment options offer more for you and your family to enjoy. You can nourish your creative side, empower your competitive spirit, or find a relaxing place to gather with friends. So come see for yourself what more you can do and find out why world-class companies choose to call Cary home.
Cool.
Very nice.
And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
okay, very nice. Okay, we now move to our next agenda item, which is Public Speaks Out. We've included instructions for speaking at Public Speaks Out on the printed agenda. And if you would like to speak at Public Speaks Out, I would ask that you take a seat in the rows to my right that are shown as reserved and follow the instructions on the agenda. Public Speaks Out speakers have 3 minutes each for their comments, and speakers may speak on any topic unless it is a public hearing, and at that time you'll be able to speak at the public hearing. So that's why we do that, and you have more time. There's a 3-minute time limit on Public Speaks Out, and not to be rude to our speakers, but to be fair, once your 3 minutes has expired, I'm going to interrupt you and ask you to conclude your comments immediately. There's a timer on the podium, and it starts off with a green light. When 30 seconds are remaining, it turns to a yellow light, and then when your time has expired, it turns to a flashing red light. Again, that's the point when I'll interrupt you, not trying to be rude, but trying to be fair to all our speakers, since we do have a 1-hour time limit on Public Speaks Out. I thank everyone in the audience for understanding that this is a business meeting, and we ask you to respect that by not applauding, making remarks from your seats, or anything else that may distract from this meeting. So now's the time for Public Speaks Out, and I would invite our first speaker forward.
Good to be back. I was here last week. Steve Burke. I live in the Northwood subdivision. And I guess I'll note first the commercials you played about Cary were we're good. I work in video production, so job well done on that. Yeah. So I was hoping to talk about, I think it's 18 Res 02, I want to say the hotel on Weston. And I attended the neighborhood meeting last week, I believe it was, to discuss that item. So a couple of notes for the council, if you didn't happen to check the document that was written up. The primary item of interest was when discussing the traffic concerns from the estimated 3087 total trips in this area daily, the obviously increased traffic resultant of the hotel. I took that opportunity during that discussion to ask the developers what the expected occupancy is of the hotel, and they noted it should be 60 to 65% expected average occupancy rate, which I believe is on record as well. So the obvious question is, at 60% occupancy, why does it need to be 80% taller with 0.81 parking spots per room when there's also hotel staff who will need to park? So I guess I mostly wanted to come back to get that number in front of the council, the 60 to 65% occupancy, if you didn't see it. I did some research. The average hotel occupancy nationwide 2019 was listed as 74%, 73.8% for summer of 2019, which would put this one on the low side. So I would be curious whether this factors into considering a height reduction or disallowing the height increase rather from 50 feet to 90 feet, or perhaps bringing it down as part of a compromise a bit lower than the current 90-foot proposal, which would help with volume, help with traffic, alleviating those concerns. The LOS, or the level of service degradation, I think was listed as going down to LOS F in one of the directions at peak hours. So reducing volume may also help there by way of reducing the height of the hotel, or the proposed height of the hotel. Yeah, that was the primary item of interest, was 80% height increase for 60% occupancy. Seems a bit imbalanced. From research online, that number is on the low side of expected occupancy. And as a secondary concern, as this goes in, if there's a sidewalk construction around the outer perimeter, which I believe there's one proposed, in the discussion from the neighborhood meeting, I believe an arborist present said that there's 600-plus-year-old oak trees in the sidewalk's path, and I'd like to see the sidewalk potentially rerouted around those trees in the very least. And if the town can't pay for it, I'll do it. And she's got my information. So let me know. I'm serious. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Council. My name is Mark Strickland. I've lived in Cary for about 30 years and off Weston Parkway for 16 years. I'm here to talk about the proposed rezoning on Weston Parkway. I've attended every meeting on this proposal, starting with the first neighborhood informational meeting. And when it was first presented to this council, the members generally said it was asking for a lot without giving anything back. Since then, the requested variance has been reduced, but it is still substantial in terms of height. However, we are still talking about it, so someone must feel there is some value. I've had a strong feeling that there is not good value for Cary, and after some self-reflection, I believe it is the issue of planned growth versus sprawl. As a community gets larger and more developed, there is a need to have some urban-type areas that provide numerous amenities in walking distance, and some natural areas that provide the green views that many people, including myself, need for mental tranquility. When growth is planned well, the urban development is clustered together to provide the convenient walkable area, leaving other good-sized areas to be more natural. In the absence of planning, urban development is scattered, leaving natural areas fragmented and requiring driving instead of walking everywhere. Neither is good for citizens' physical or mental health. With this proposal, we would get a very large hotel that is not walkable from any amenity, and we would cut in half the tree-lined drive that is Weston Parkway from Realtors Way all the way down to MetLife. There is not a strong possibility that there will be any walkable amenity in the foreseeable future, as there are existing office buildings in both directions of Weston Parkway, and the properties across Weston Parkway abut the single-family homes, which I live in, and your planning director has said that precludes large development on that side. So we could have years, or in my belief, decades before any urban-type areas could exist here. Meanwhile, one of the truly special natural type areas in the town of Cary would be tarnished. The concept of infill is that existing dots of urban development get joined together with more such development to make an exciting, walkable urban area. This proposal is not infill. It just creates a new dot of urban development, and that is the signature of sprawl. This council has done a great job in limiting the sprawl in Cary, and I ask you to please continue to do that and vote no on the zoning variances. That was my talk. My wife also wanted to talk, but she didn't want to come up here. So I'm now her. So she wanted to thank the council very much for your service in making the town such a wonderful place to live. She wanted to say your vote is your voice. Your vote will influence people's perception of your integrity, your acumen, and your commitment to Cary's residents' quality of life and your professional reputation. This developer's one-sided, I get more than I give proposal should not be granted rezoning approval. Vote no, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Town Council and Mayor. My name is Karina Walker, a resident of Cary for over 6 years. I'm here to recommend you oppose the rezoning proposal for 18 Reso 2 for the property on Weston Parkway. Like many other concerned citizens, I have not been able to attend all of the Town Council meetings to voice my concerns. In my nursing profession, I advocate for patients and educate them about their care plans. It made me question the transparency of the developer and educating the community about the rezoning and the potential impacts of the property. To help make these concerns known, I created a petition to share with the Cary community and people affected by this project. To my surprise, many of the people I reached out to were not aware of this project, perhaps because the notices and signs for the rezoning have not been publicized in almost a year. Using information provided by the Town Council and developer, we wrote a petition now that has more than 230 signatures from around Cary community. More than half of these are confirmed Cary citizens. The spirit of our petition against the rezoning of 18 Reso 2 was not anti-development, rather it opposes reducing our fine town standards to cater to the ambitious developer. Surrounding businesses were able to build profitable enterprises while meeting the town's rules. As of now, 230 people oppose the rezoning of 18 Reso 2. I will read out some of their names. Robert Alger, Zivi Avi, Julie Banks, Jerry Bardas, George Bernards, Karen Bernards, Cameron Bernards, Cheryl Blazer, Mary Ann Bowler, Reed Boone, Helena Bozor, Rachel Brown, Brenda Carroll, Susan Choi, Chris Choi, Brian Choi, Stephanie Clement, Mark Cohen, Beth Cohen, Linwood Cole, Irina Darmiski, Rachel Franklin, Michelle Gisner, Sheila George, Alex Gersten, John Green, Courtney Griffin, Bruce Humphrey, Norbert Ingram, Mel Ingram, Kathleen Kraser, Jessica Kraser, Jill Kasalik, Kip Kasalik, Ann Lockhart, Emily Martinez, Robert Martinez, Edward Maydew, Naomi Maydew, Mary McNara, Patrick McNara, Carmen Mew, Mike Norden, Gina Norden, Nathaniel Norden, Thomas Ricketts, Mona Sy, Lori Spivey, Donald Stevens, Judy Strickland, James Taylor, myself, Karina Walker, Trevor Walker.
Ms. Walker, I'm sorry, your time has expired.
Thank you. And there's many more.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello. Is this working? Okay, perfect. Once again, I just wanted to come and discuss the hotel that's
Could you
going
state your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. Tamara Dunn.
Thank you.
I'm at on Old Reedy Creek Road, and we own the property at 1710 Old Reedy Creek Road, where we are going to be building a veterinary hospital right across from where the hotel's at. My concern continues to be safety and parking. I know that they have asked for reduced parking. I'm concerned that when there are events in the evening, because a hotel this size normally holds events, high school reunions, weddings, bar mitzvahs, and one of the things that they had mentioned was that people would be Ubering in and they wouldn't be parking there, but when you have an event in the evening, you not only have your parking lot full, you have an overflow. I'm very concerned about what that overflow is going to look like for our business when we open it, whether we're going to come in the morning and our parking lot is full of cars from the hotel and we're not able to have a place for our clients to park. So that's one concern. The other is still safety. Because I live on Old Reedy Creek Road, I drive up and down it every day. On my way here, I passed a family of 4 out walking, 3 teenagers jogging, people on bicycles, and that short portion of Old Reedy Creek tends to be where everyone from the neighborhood across Weston crosses over. And I'm concerned what that's going to look like when the traffic is increased with that large of a hotel there, particularly with a bar on the top of it. And I have nothing against cocktails. I'm just saying it's a bit of a concern. So that's really all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Next speaker, please.
Hello, I'm Robert Kratz. I'm not a gifted orator, so I'll be brief. I speak in support of the hotel proposed construction. I live in Bexley. I drive by this area every day. And while I regret the loss of any green space, I think it's naive to assume that nothing's going to be built here. I don't see how this is any more objectionable than, say, a giant 3-building insurance company building or a huge 5-story office building which illuminates my skylight every night. So, I don't really have any objections to this. I understand that they've met and agreed to comply with recommendations from the planning committee. So that's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Kratz. Anyone else for Public Speaks Out? And while this gentleman's coming up, if there are others for Public Speaks Out that would like to speak, it would expedite the process if the next speaker would be waiting on the steps or at the bottom of the steps. Thank you.
Well, good evening. It's great to be here. My name is Tom Looney. I'm from 204 Middenhall Way in Cary in Wessex. I've lived in this great town since 1994, which is 25 years. It was the same year that Cary was named one of the best places in the country to live and continues to be there. So I want to thank you for your service because my years here in Cary have been fantastic, and it's been a fantastic neighborhood in Wessex. I also want to thank the town council as well as the staff, who I think did a very comprehensive job analyzing what had to be done with this hotel, and I think that the developer worked collaboratively with our residents and with the town planning staff to make sure that all issues were addressed. I was originally involved in the Arboretum project. I was the first homeowners association president of Wessex. I'm a big proponent of economic development. I was part of the Economic Development Partnership Board. I believe that when you live this close to RTP and RDU, that there's going to be higher density over time. I think it's very positive for our neighborhood. I think our neighbors will have an affordable hotel other than the Umstead to stay at for when we have family and friends over. I think we'll be able to access Crabtree Lake now with a lounge that'll be on the backside of the hotel, not looking at our neighborhood. As I said, I believe the developer has worked more diligently with the homeowners than, quite frankly, we did during the Arboretum project. And I would say that most of the residents in Wessex would tell you, while we were concerned about the Arboretum, it's been a fantastic neighbor and a great place for our residents to go to shop, to go to dinner. and get their dry cleaning done. So I will tell you, as a 25-year resident of Wessex, someone who's very committed to North Carolina and involved in efforts across this state in economic development and environmental efforts, I believe enthusiastically support this project because I trust the city of Cary, I trust the staff, I trust this council, and I trust the developer who's doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Sharma Vemuri. I reside at 115 Juliet Circle, Cary, which is Norwell Boulevard and Western Parkway intersection. So I'm in support of the project, and I also attended the neighborhood meeting, and the Cary, the staff did a fantastic job in explaining all the, ins and all the plans of the project. And I also believe that this hotel will boost the economic development of our area and remains the Cary the best place to live. I trust the Cary Town Council, I trust the Cary staff, and in support of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Cindy Yager. I'm sure you all know me. I've written a few letters, emails to you all. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition to this hotel project. My main points of opposition are, number one, to ask for an almost 100% increase in the height of a building over the current code is, to me, outrageous. There's nothing else on other than MetLife, which sets back many, many, many feet from Weston Parkway. This hotel will sit right 50-foot buffer. I know the developer has, everyone said that he's made concessions. He brought the height down 10 feet, which I don't consider much of a concession. He's also agreed to put a type A buffer, but in doing that, he's going to be taking down existing trees and replanting, and it takes up to 20 years for these plants to mature. So in that time frame, I'm a resident of Wessex, we're going to be looking at the hotel. Not only that, we will also be looking at the noise from the hotel, the lights. I happen to back up to it, so I'm in opposition to this project. Traffic is also a very, very big concern for me. It's very difficult to get out of Wessex onto Weston. A lot of people are using Montebello with the new hotel going in on Harrison. They're going to put a U-turn at Montebello, and people getting out of our neighborhood are not going to be able to get across. And I think I don't even allow my grandchildren to drive to my house because it's so dangerous coming in or out of that neighborhood right now. I can't imagine when they get more cars. And I just am hoping that you all, and I've said this before, I hope you guys are listening to what the people that live the closest to it are saying. And it's going to really, safety standards, traffic, noise, it's going to affect our properties and our lives in a very negative way. If they could just bring it down to 50 feet, keep them in the same confines that they've done the other buildings, I don't understand. If it's not going to be a fully 65% occupancy rate, I don't understand why they need to have a 90-foot building. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak at Public Speaks Out?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm John Cook. I represent Samaritan Housing Foundation in the rezoning of Phase 2 of the Searstone Retirement Community. Really wasn't planning to speak tonight, but you may have gotten a letter earlier this week that was addressed to me from another lawyer representing Sears Farm I know it's been a really busy week for everybody, so you may not have had a chance to concentrate on that letter, but I just wanted to have some brief remarks about the letter. The contents of the letter is a statement by Sears Farm, the original developer, that they are still committed to the conservatory and to put that into the Sears Stone PDD. I think it's important to note that its letter says it's its commitment. That's an important thing to us because it's not our commitment. It's not the residents' commitment. It was their commitment. Also, I want to tell you that that letter wasn't something that we asked them to write. I didn't know the letter was coming before I got it. They haven't participated in the rezoning whatsoever, any of the neighborhood meetings, and we haven't had any contact with them. So I wanted to make sure you knew that we didn't ask them to write this letter and send it to you. From our perspective, we've never thought of our case as a trade of the conservatory. We've always thought of our case as completing our residential community, and nothing more than that. So from our perspective, the case is you can approve the rezoning. We can complete this community in the way that the community wants it completed, and the owner-operator thinks it should be completed, and we can add more senior housing opportunities in Cary, or you can deny it. The practical side is phase 2 won't get built because phase 2 has this obligation to build a conservatory. Let me just give you a little information. I believe that your downtown theater is a 7,000 square foot facility. I believe it cost somewhere around $14 million. The conservatory that was promised to you was a 20,000 square foot facility. So you can just do the math. There's no way that phase 1 is feasible and will continue, but there's no way phase 2 can handle that obligation. Those residents just simply can't pay it. So it's not going to happen unless we find a way to complete phase 2 without that obligation. We have trust and confidence in you to make the right decision. I know you guys got a lot of experience in these matters, but that's the way we kind of see our case, and we hope you agree with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Next speaker, please.
Mayor and Town Council, I'm Roger Heiser. I'm president of the Searstone Resident Association. I'd like to speak on the behalf of the residents on this letter that John Cook just referred to. I go back to the one point I think it's important that you recognize, and that's at the what came out of the bankruptcy proceeding for Sears Farm. And in that proceeding, there was recognition during that Sears Farm acknowledges that Sears Farm is aware that one, Samaritan does not intend to cause the construction on Lot 37. So there was a recognition by Sears Farm in that bankruptcy settlement that was not going to be part of phase 2. I want to address it from the standpoint of the residents. You all asked at the July meeting that you wanted to see more green space and gathering spaces in our community. And I believe what you're going to see and what has happened and what you'll see in a couple of weeks is that has been addressed. And you're going to see some beautiful landscaping, gathering places, and green space. The residents of our community, the vast majority of them, support this project. And we believe wholeheartedly that to put that conservatory in the community would be a setback for us and for what you're looking for, because it will take away green space and gathering places in that community. And as a result, we don't support putting the conservatory on that property. We also believe it will create issues for traffic for our community, traffic concerns, as well as traffic concerns out on High House and Davis Drive. Having said that, in my opinion, and this is just mine, I see no reason that the conservatory can't be built on Sears Farm property. You all have seen the property layout of both Searstone and the property that surrounds us. You all have seen the various facilities that were envisioned back in the original plan for Searstone and the whole community. In that plan, there was a plan for a hotel. There is no reason, in my opinion, that that conservatory cannot be built on that site. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Heiser. Next speaker, please.
So, Mr. Mayor, councilors, my name is Sal Musera. I'm a senior land planner with Kimley Horn out of Richmond, Virginia, formerly a 15-year resident of the town of Cary. About 5 years ago now, we presented the concepts relative to the Weston PDD Amendment 18 REZ02. And at the time, the comments we received from members of the staff, chamber, manager's office, were generally, well, this looks like a project that is consistent with what our adopted plans and policies are saying for this area, a project that would create great local tax revenue, and seemed like the rare commercial project that would have a fairly minimal impact on legacy neighborhoods. This was 5 years ago. Following our formal application over 21 months ago, and with 6 supplemental applications, each time we've heard comments from this council, from staff in the community. And each time the applicant brought the consultant team together and said, I want you to address every comment, every concern to the best of our capabilities. And over almost a 2-year period, we really believe that we have done that. In my time at Cary, I've seen how important the process is, seen how important community input is to the process. And we trust in that and believe that, and we think that's appropriate. Of equal importance to the process is reliance on your technical advisors that you have with respect to your staff, which is a wonderful staff, and your planning and zoning boards. Your staff has recommended approval, obviously, and has commented that they thought this was an appropriate type of development based on your adopted plans and Imagine Cary and your adopted policies, that this was an appropriate direction to go based on what you have decided the town should look at. And we know these plans are right there flexible. You design them to be flexible over time. In addition, the Planning and Zoning Board recommended unanimously back in December for approval of the application as you see it tonight. It's a very challenging site. We know that. The proposal is very creative to deal with that, including some things like structured parking, which reduces the amount of impervious area. The structured parking is put on the low part of the site where it's only 10 feet above the top levels, only 10 feet above Weston Parkway, behind the 50-foot buffers, which are maintained. We did condition the application to provide supplemental, if needed, plantings, which does not mean removing existing plantings. It means supplementing where necessary to maintain obtain an opaque buffer, which is your highest standard. And so, those types of things. Sidewalks all around the site, that was not our initial direction, but the feedback we got was that was desired, so we're doing sidewalks around all sides, which is not required. The applicant paid for 2 TARs, and out of that came the concession, the condition to add a turn lane.
But I have to interrupt you.
So we ask for your support this evening. We trust in the process, and we think your process has created a better application.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak at Public Speaks Out? Anyone at all? If we have additional speakers, I would ask that you stand in the stairway so that we know we have additional speakers.
Hey, Town Council, how you doing? My name is Cambria Yager. My mom is Cindy. I'm sure you've heard from her more than once up here. I just really came to support the citizens of Cary, especially those that are going to be impacted by this hotel. You know, I've heard about it for quite some time in my house, but I do understand that there's been quite a big lack of publicity up until the last couple months. And Karina came up sharing a petition that had over 230 signatures. Something I didn't hear her say was that that was in only 6 days. 6 days is what it took to get over 200 people to sign this petition. That's all grassroots coming up, sharing what it's going to do to the local community, you know, how it's going to impact Black Creek. I mean, that's a lot of people that, you know, it's not a bunch of Facebook shares, a bunch of people that aren't in Cary actually being impacted by this. This is town of Cary that's speaking out against it, which I'm glad we have the right to do. The one thing that I think hurts the most is knowing that some of my mom's neighbors may be sitting and having Christmas dinner and can have a hotel full of people looking in on them. Because at 90 feet, whether it's the top bar or a few of the top floors, could you imagine sharing a special time with your family, knowing somebody could be looking in or what you could look up at? I'm sure we all know what goes on in hotel rooms. It's mainly a lot of private things that people don't want to be shared, but it's one of those things where you want to keep what's in your home private. And if you have to shut all your doors and windows, I mean, that's not the type of place Cary's supposed to be. So I hope you guys take that into consideration, and you wouldn't want that kind of thing, you know, happening in your home. And I hope you think about it before voting yes to something like this. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak if public speaks out? Anyone at all? Going to close public speaks out and move to the consent agenda. For the benefit of the people watching our meeting on TV, we're going to take a moment to review our consent agenda items. Please keep in mind that one vote approves all consent agenda items. On the consent agenda this evening, we have 19A03, Vincent J. DeFreitas annexation, 19 REZ09, 9916 Morrisville Parkway rezoning and statement of consistency, fiscal year 19 transportation development fee reimbursements, Act 12 land development ordinance amendments and statements of consistency. At this time, I would ask council members if they would like anything pulled from the consent agenda for discussion. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and that takes us to public hearings. We have one public hearing this evening. Same rules apply for public hearings that applied for public speaks out with one exception. Speakers now have 5 minutes each for their comments instead of 3. Our first and only public hearing is item 5.1, which is 19 REZ 10 Petty Farm rezoning. Planning Manager Rob Wilson will introduce the item. Council will not take action on this rezoning tonight, but it will be referred to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation, and it will return to council at a future meeting. Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, Council. For your consideration is a request to rezone approximately 14 acres located at 1708 Petty Farm Road to allow a multifamily residential development. The site's located in the Alston area. It's bordered by the Brickyard to the north, the CSX Railroad to the east, and by a single-family house and undeveloped property to the west and south. The Alston Town Center and Panther Creek High School are nearby on the west side of NC 55. The site is currently used as a lumber yard and has an older dwelling that's now used as an office. Our GIS records indicate that there are stream buffers on the property. The exact location of these features would be determined as part of development plan review. There are not any existing parks or greenways near the site. The site has frontage on Petty Farm Road, which is a dead-end, 2-lane local street. The town's adopted roadway width map does show Mahal Avenue to the north of the site, shown here in blue, which is being constructed by the Brickyard as a collector avenue, as well as the future envisioned alignment of McCrimmon Parkway to the south, which is shown here in pink, which would be a 4-lane thoroughfare. NC Highway 55 is located just west of the site. Go Cary does not currently provide service in this area. Go Triangle has a route that runs along NC 55 although the nearest stop is just over a mile south of the site at Morrisville Carpenter Road. So what specifically is being requested? The applicant wants to build an apartment community on the site. There are 3 zoning scenarios by which development could occur on this site. The first scenario is to develop in accordance with the base zoning district. In this case, the base zoning is Office Research and Development, or ORD. The applicant does not want to develop office or research-related uses on the site, so the base zoning doesn't work in this situation. The second scenario is to develop in accordance with the Alston Activity Center Concept Plan, an overlay district that's very prescriptive, structured, and it's complicated. Since the plan calls for a mix of uses and fewer units than desired by the applicant, this option does not work either. This brings us to the final option. When the Imagine Cary Community Plan was adopted in 2017, it identified the Alston area as a destination center, thereby providing the ability for a developer to ask for something different with more density. Since the existing base zoning and the Alston Activity Center Concept Plan overlay zoning do not work, tapping the destination center designation is the only scenario that may be utilized to build the proposed apartment community on this site. Per the LDO, the only zoning district that's available in a destination center is Mixed Use District, or MXD. Thus, the applicant has requested MXD zoning for the site. So if approved, the MXD zoning would replace the existing ORD base zoning and the Alston Activity Center Concept Plan overlay zoning for the site, effectively creating an island that would no longer be regulated by the Alston Plan. At the same time, it's reasonable to consider the requirements of the Alston Plan as part of evaluating the proposed MXD zoning for the site. So let's take a quick look at the Alston Plan. It breaks the area into 5 neighborhoods. The site's located in the Petty Farm neighborhood. In this neighborhood, non-residential and/or mixed use are envisioned to frame the neighborhood's main street and be located adjacent to NC 55 and the future McCrimmon Parkway. Residential uses are intended to be conveniently located for work and play. It's also noted that topography and stream buffers may limit building footprints in this area. The Alston Plan regulates land use, density, and design standards through both design zones and traffic analysis zones. The Petty Farm neighborhood includes 2 design zones, a neighborhood center and neighborhood general. The site includes land in both of these zones. Neighborhood center, shown here in pink, is intended to include office and neighborhood retail, as well as apartments and townhomes. Neighborhood general, shown here in orange, is intended to be primarily residential with townhomes and detached dwellings. The site is also located in Traffic Analysis Zone 15, or TAZ 15 for short. This zone, which basically is the southern half of the Petty Farm neighborhood, envisions predominantly office uses with up to 400,000 square feet of office, 60,000 square feet of commercial, and 355 residential dwelling units throughout the zone. So between the design and traffic analysis zones, we could summarize that the Alston Plan calls for a mix of uses in the southern half of the Petty Farm neighborhood, with office as the predominant use and retail and residential playing a secondary supporting role. The proposed MXD zoning is accompanied by the required Preliminary Development Plan, or PDP. In addition to limiting the number of apartments on this 13.9-acre site to 350 units, the PDP also includes minimums and maximums for the number of bedrooms in each unit. The plan also provides the LDO required minimum of 2,400 square feet of community gathering space and surface parking, along with a few places where garage parking will be provided. MXD zoning provides the opportunity for PDPs to propose and incorporate alternative standards to achieve the right formula of land uses, scale, intensity, and site design for success. This proposal requests 3 alternative standards. The first is a reduction in the amount of required parking. Depending on the number of bedrooms constructed, the reduction would range from as low as 34.8% to as high as 38.4%. The applicant's also proposing to remove the requirement to provide at least 24 square feet of individual enclosed storage space with an external entry for each unit. And finally, the applicant's proposing to reduce the southern buffer from a 50-foot type A to a 20-foot type B. Property owners within 800 feet of the site were notified regarding the public hearing. This exceeds the state requirement of notifying adjacent properties and the LDO requirement of notifying those within 100 feet. A total of 6 citizens attended the neighborhood meeting on June the 5th. Questions focused on the future of Petty Farm Road, whether or not traffic would drive through the proposed apartment site, if Petty Farm neighborhood would still be mixed use, and whether or not larger buffers would be needed if this site is developed for apartments. In staff's initial evaluation of the Imagine Cary Community Plan, we've observed that the request may be consistent with some of the policies in the Live, Work, and Shape chapters. Based on staff's initial review of the proposed rezoning and PDP, we believe there are some key issues that may merit further discussion. Although the applicable design and traffic analysis zones in the Alston Plan call for mixed use and predominantly office uses in the Petty Farm neighborhood, the new MXD base zoning proposed for this site would only allow residential. And although the site only makes up about 25% of TAS 15, the proposed 350 dwelling units requested for the site is basically equivalent to the 355 units that were envisioned for all of TAS 15 by the Alston Plan. Petty Farm Road is currently a dead-end cul-de-sac extending off Mahal Avenue. In its current alignment, the road and its existing public right-of-way are a significant design constraint for the rest of the Petty Farm neighborhood. Specifically, the location of the road is close enough to NC 55 that it limits the depth of the property and the dimensions that could be used in terms of building footprints and parking for the office uses that were envisioned for the area. King Closer Road, which is being constructed southward from Mahal, would offer better dimensionality from NC 55 in terms of preserving functional building footprints for non-residential uses. The plan does, both the Alston Plan and the Community Plan envision high-quality housing in Cary. There are very limited zoning conditions, though, that are associated with the proposal, discussing items like clean lines and dark trim. We believe that these conditions are very subjective and would be difficult to enforce. A traffic analysis was conducted for this site, and improvements were recommended as a result of the study. At this time, the applicant has not offered to make any improvements, although we have had active discussions regarding one potential improvement. As previously mentioned, the applicant has requested a parking ratio reduction, whereby the number of spaces provided would vary depending on the number of bedrooms in each unit. Compared to the LDO requirements, the best case unit mix would be a reduction of 34.8%. If they only build 1 and 2 bedroom units, though, the reduction could go as high as 38.4%. Normally, the LDO limits reductions to a maximum of 30%, or in this case, a minimum of 559 spaces. Although since this is MXD, the applicant does have the ability to ask for any amount they choose. Staff is concerned as this is a significant reduction that has been requested. It is lower than the reductions that have been requested of council for other multifamily developments in the Alston area. And if a shortage of spaces were to occur on this site, the only solution would be for excess cars to park in the adjacent neighborhoods or park in the parking lots of adjacent uses that have not been proposed at this time. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here and will now speak regarding the proposal. Staff will be available for questions following the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. At this time, I'd invite the applicant forward for their remarks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Jamie Schwadler with Parker Poe, here on behalf of Crescent Communities, the applicant. Rob did a great job in describing the very complicated Alston plan and all of the different layers, and so I won't belabor those points. But I will just explain that we're here tonight seeking 350 units on a 14-acre site in an area where the town's original vision for that site has changed and has been supplanted by the Cary Community Plan that recognizes multifamily as an appropriate use on the site. The change in the use is also appropriate because the Petty Farm area of the Alston Plan was not fulfilled as envisioned. From the original adoption of Alston in 2006 to the Cary Community Update a decade later, each of the neighborhoods have seen significant development except for Petty Farm. And apart from the Brickyard in 2014, the mix of commercial, office, and residential that was originally envisioned for Petty Farm did not come to fruition. And in fact, TAS 15 has been virtually untouched for that entire time after the original adoption of the Alston Plan. And this is due in part to site factors. We have a site that has two significant stream buffers that cut deeply into the site. There's significant topographical changes, and there's also an active rail line that's along the side of the site. But it's also due to market factors. It's very difficult to attract office and commercial to a site that has no visibility from 55 and has no real visibility once you take those topographical changes into account. In the meantime, as I said, TAS 15 has sat undeveloped, but other properties further up the untold portion of 540 have enjoyed that office use, and those have been thriving. And so as a result, the office and commercial has simply relocated in different areas than originally envisioned. And in 2016, the Imagine Cary process recognized multifamily as one of the appropriate uses within the Alston area to complement the overall destination center. Now, at that time, when that was adopted, the overall destination center already had two very significant commercial developments. It had the Alston Town Center across 55 from the site, and now we have Parkside that's just north of 540. So we've had other commercial developments come along. They just have chosen not to locate in this area, and neither has the office. And so we believe that today multifamily makes sense for this site, and we've added significant conditions to the PDP to make sure that this multifamily is integrated in an appropriate way as the updated conditions have reflected in today's market. And so the CCP, the Cary Community Plan, recognized multifamily as an incidental use, so it's appropriate for the site, and recommends heights of 3 to 7 stories. Our heights are between 3 and 5, depending on the topographical changes, and they're integrated into the topography to reduce the impact on those stream buffers. We've also created dense kind of building footprints so that you can see the 2 stream buffers that are significant through the site, and that enables us to reduce our building footprints, to increase the open space, and reduce the impervious amount that we're able to put on the site. The PDP also commits to a community gathering area that's over 10,000 square feet, so that's over 3 times the minimum required by the LDO. Those 2 community gathering areas are shown there in the dark green, and the remainder of the lighter green is open space. And so when you combine those together, over a quarter of the site is open space. This exceeds what the Alston Plan called for, and certainly exceeds what requirements are in the LDO. In addition, we do commit to architectural character of dark details to contrast with the lighter facade, and this was done to reflect the intended design here that's a farmhouse look. Now, we're happy to talk further with staff about the language of the enforceability of those architectural commitments, but we're fully committed to making them and bringing forth an impressive architectural design. So although the PDP creates a new zoning district here where the Alston Plan doesn't apply, we are still committing to retain as much of Alston as appropriate. We've extended the north-south connector, the King Closer Road, from the Brickyard community to the north. Unless otherwise noted on the PDP, we've included a commitment that the neighborhood center design zone guidelines apply. So everything Rob mentioned about the intense work that your staff put into the neighborhood center design zones, we will apply unless we have some sort of specific note on the PDP that those should not apply. And that will help integrate into the original vision as well as tie into the Brickyard to the north. And as a result, the proposed rezoning is consistent with both the Alston Plan guidance as updated per the Cary Community Plan. The Future Growth Framework map designated the site as one of only 5 destination centers in town, appropriate for the highest densities. This designation did not follow the Alston Plan design guidelines and instead emphasized density and intensity throughout the entire destination center. Multifamily use is also supported by the LIVE chapter, which recognizes the need for housing in this important location close to RTP and significant north-south connector of 55. It also is supporting the LIVE chapter and the Alston Plan that there should be a housing variety. And so we have townhome and single-family detached to the north and Brickyard. The multifamily would bring a new type of product that is not seen elsewhere within the Petty Farm neighborhood. And it's also significant that there is no other multifamily use within Petty Farm. And while commercial and office are no longer a fit for the site for the reasons I explained, redevelopment of this existing lumberyard will open up the area for development between our site and 55. So there still is plenty of opportunity for that commercial and office space to relocate here once the operational brickyard or once the operational lumberyard goes away. We are requesting a parking modification of 1 space per bedroom with an overall ratio of 1.4 that brings us to about that 34%. These are slightly higher than the request approved in Hawthorne and the Solis plan, and is similar to what's proposed in the Alston PDP rezoning. One of the reasons for that is because we have these significant areas of the buffer that cut into the site and the topo. The other reason is that we're trying to follow the destination-centered designation that speaks to that density. And then with respect to traffic commitments, we appreciate the staff agrees with our justifications not to make these. However, we recognize the importance of the town's project at McCrimmon and Highcroft Drive, and we've offered a $25,000 contribution towards the town's project to further the town's goals. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we have representatives for both Crescent and the design team here to answer those questions as well.
Thank you. So now's the time for the public hearing for 19 RZ 10 Petty Farm rezoning, and I would invite our first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. The next step in this process is it will go to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation. It will come back to us in a couple of months, 2 to 3 months, and we will make a decision at that time. All right, that takes us to our first discussion item, item 6.1.
Are we not going to make any discussion on that item?
I'm sorry, please.
That's okay. I just wanted to give some feedback to the applicant. I don't know if anyone else had.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. So I appreciate the fact that this is a difficult place, but I guess I have some questions. Just north of the MXD line, is that still the continuation of the Brickyard? They just haven't built there yet? So north of that MXD, but south of the Brickyard, where there's nothing on any of your pictures? Or is that just an empty piece of property?
Most of that is a Brickyard.
So
could you say that to the mic?
yeah, maybe you could.
So what you see up on the built-out street there, most of that is the Brickyard, and it's under construction now. Some of the parcels to the south are not under construction or could be later phases.
Yeah, this portion here is currently, they're putting in infrastructure and streets, but they haven't gone vertical yet. So this will be, I believe it's a patio lot. It's either patio lots or townhomes.
Single family homes attached? Or
Townhomes
townhomes.
or small detached lots, yes.
So my concern is that the site map that you're showing for this development shows a sea of parking that will basically be able to be seen by those patio homes, right? So with a very small buffer. So I'm really concerned of the layout of this, because you'll have the homes, then you have a sea of parking, and then you have apartments. And I just don't think that makes good neighbors, you know, a sea of parking right up to those homes. That's concerning.
Do we put the building rendering back up?
To me.
Mm-hmm. You wanted the PDP?
Yeah, that.
There you go.
So all that surface parking that you see, that's going to be right on the other side of that. There'll be that home product. And I just think that there's got to be a better way to have good neighbors there to enjoy that.
So is the opposite having apartments on the edge where we hear from neighbors saying there's 3-story apartments where people can look into my house? That's what I'm wondering what the alternative
They have
would be.
well, so yeah, they have different types of housing products. So maybe townhome, and then, you know, more, you know, put the surface parking in between. But you've got one development, a home development, right? The patio homes. Then you have the sea of parking. Then you have townhomes. There seems to be some opportunity for mixing it up.
For an appropriate transition?
That's the word. I knew there'd be a real planning phrase out there.
I mean, and that buffer they're requesting that buffer to be reduced, right?
On the south, is it?
Just on the south?
Yes, the proposed buffer to the north is consistent with what's required by the LDO.
Okay, because it's residential to residential.
Correct.
Okay. Right. Alrighty. Yeah, I have some concerns about the fact that they're reducing the parking by so much, when the reason why we allow those reductions in a mixed use is that you have spillover into office or commercial areas.
Exactly.
Here, the only opportunity for spillovers into another neighborhood, and that doesn't seem like it's a good fit. So it almost seems like there's too much being squished on this site for the site to be able to handle. I mean, this looks like an opportunity for structured parking, at least for some element of it, to be able to put in adequate parking for the community and then still have adequate buffers and so forth.
Exactly. I think I definitely understand the applicant's concern with things have been changing underneath them while the Cary Community Plan, and I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that there is a component of the original Alston plan that said, hey, you can have 350 units of multifamily, and let's try to get it into this. But there's got to be another way. And CSX, that line is not active. I think there's 3 trains a week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a very active line either, and who knows if it'll even remain that way.
Right. It could be something completely different
Right.
in the future. That's right. I mean, one thing I would like staff to do for me, if you don't mind, is to go back and pull the staff report and the comments when the Brickyard project was going through, because my recollection is there was this big, like, we know we're taking away office from this project, but
we can do
look, we're going to do it immediately to the south. I mean, that's my recollection, so I'd kind of like to see that. It's kind of hard when you kind of feel like you're like, all right, we'll do residential on this site because we're going to have the office, immediately to the south, and then that gets pulled away. It's just like, dominoes falling one after the next. So I just want to make sure that I understand kind of the history of this and if this is really the right fit in the, with the conditions that they're putting on this.
Yeah, and I was really thankful that staff also weighed in on the appearance of the buildings. I'd like to see more conditions with respect to the quality. Just saying it's going to be a high quality development. Put additional verbiage behind it. What that means? Is it a certain amount of masonry? Is it something more concrete? Oh,
Oh, no.
it will not be. Yeah, pun not intended. Yeah, that will give us a better sense of what you're going for, so that we have an idea of what this community will look like on the ground. And I also would love to see you do more on the transportation side. I think there was only one out of all the TARs that I saw that recommendations. I know some of them are only 1% or 3% of your impact, but everybody else has participated to make this a better pedestrian and transportation friendly environment. We have a pedestrian bridge that we're looking at doing over 55 as well. So it'd be great if everybody, played their part to address the transportation issues that 350 homes will make. Sorry, that was my list.
I'm sorry about that.
That's right.
Other questions or comments? Okay. This will go to our Planning and Zoning Board, and we'll see it again in a few months. Now moving to discussion items. First discussion item is 18 RZ 02 Weston PDD Amendment. This item was continued from our September 26th meeting. Assistant Planning Director Deborah Grannon will give tonight's report. We're going to hear from the Planning and Zoning Board about their recommendation, and we may take action this evening. This item will require a simple majority vote. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you, Council. Good evening. For your consideration is a request to rezone approximately 4.9 acres located at 1000 Winstead Drive in the Weston Planned Development District. The subject property is triangular in shape and has frontage on Weston Parkway, Winstead Drive, and Old Reedy Creek Road. It's part of the Weston PDD, which was first approved back in 1984. The subject property was designated for office and institutional use. There was a 50-foot landscape buffer. The opacity of the buffer or the performance of the buffer was not specified. That was required along Weston Parkway and along Reedy Creek Road. There was no buffer requirement along Winstead Drive. This is a list of the permitted uses today in the Weston PDD for this particular tract. That includes office and institutional uses, churches, college, libraries, museums, child care centers, funeral homes, animal hospitals, etc. The applicant is proposing to add public accommodation, which would include hotel or motel as a permitted use on the subject property. Along with this request, they've proposed the following standards: that the maximum height be limited to 90 feet, that sidewalk be provided along all 3 street frontages. As you may recall, when the Weston PDD was first developed many years ago, it proposed all those greenway trails. So we have lots of gaps in the sidewalk, and as new developments coming in, that's something that staff has encouraged applicants to consider. They are proposing a 19% reduction in the parking. They've proposed the old Reedy Creek Road streetscape be reduced from 50 feet to 30 feet, but I would like to point out and clarify that no reduction to the streetscape on Weston Parkway would be required or requested, and then they're also offering to provide a streetscape along Winstead Drive as well. In addition, they've proposed that additional plantings be provided in the Weston streetscape to bring it up to that Type A buffer standard. And as a point of clarification, we would require tree protection fencing. There would need to be some clearing if there's widening of the road, installation of sidewalk, but we would ask them to protect as much of that buffer area as possible and then supplement that to bring that up to the Type A standard. Hardscape features are offered to screen the service entrances. An at-grade pedestrian path is offered between the parking structure to the hotel entrance. They've got a provision where they could offer a terrace on an upper floor of the hotel, which could accommodate full-service food operations. But this is not a guaranteed zoning condition that would exist. It's just would allow that. A right turn lane has been proposed onto Winstead Drive, and the applicant has proposed signalized pedestrian crossings. This is a copy of the applicant's master plan, which is included with the PDD. The area in blue shows the hotel location, and the area in orange shows the location of the structured parking. The applicant is proposing screening, as I mentioned, along the service entrance with a masonry wall, a decorative entranceway. They've proposed to have the road widening here, and then the pedestrian crossings in this location. This was first presented to you well over a year ago. When this was first introduced in March 2018, there was a great deal of concern at that time because they were proposing the reduction in the streetscape, and as we mentioned, they've withdrawn that. So they've gone back to the requirement in the PDD, and the LDO would only require a 30-foot streetscape, but the PDD required that 50-foot streetscape. So they've gone back to offering that. There was a public hearing in June of 2018, a balloon test in August of 2016. The Planning and Zoning Board heard the case in December of 2018, and then there was an information and community meeting held at your request here at Town Hall just last week. So what's before you tonight is that lengthy list of conditions and staff's presentation of our analysis of how this fits with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. So we began with looking at the overall Weston PDD and its evolution. It was first adopted back in 1984. It started as a traditional office park, primarily office buildings, and then in 2004, Council approved several revisions to the master plan to allow a more mixed-use environment, and we saw the introduction of residential multifamily throughout the Weston PDD. In acknowledgement of the transitioning environment and the Imagine Cary Growth Framework map, we designated this area with the Imagine Cary plan as an employment mixed-use campus, which is defined as a vertical or horizontal mix of uses, commercial and residential uses, arranged in a walkable pattern with an active pedestrian realm where buildings front streets. The character is meant to be somewhat more urban than a traditional office park, with a greater emphasis on structured parking, but with ample landscaping and attention paid to site design, public gathering spaces, and a more interconnected street and pedestrian network. So within the Weston PDD, this is transitioning to a more mixed-use model. Staff also identified the work, shape, and move policies that supported the request. the work policy suggesting that to remain competitive in the 21st century workplace, locations must appeal to businesses that are looking for a full range of amenities, and a hotel could offer services and amenities that could support the local businesses. The shape policy recognizes that infill development may need added height for certain projects to be viable, but cautions that they be sensitive to surrounding properties. And that's where this case has had its most attention, because it is an infill parcel. It's one of the remaining parcels in Weston, but it does represent a change from what we've seen in the past. Some of the proposals for landscaping and decorative elements would provide a better transition to surrounding properties. And then the move policies reinforce the importance of a safe, accessible, well-maintained transportation system. And the applicant is offering improvements that would help ensure both vehicular safety and traffic safety. When the Planning and Zoning Board heard this case in December of 2018, they did recommend it to be consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan by a vote of 5-0. And the incoming board chair, Ryan Eads, is here to talk to you about the board's deliberations. And then following his comments, I'll conclude staff's remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Grannon. Welcome, Mr. Eads.
Good evening. As staff pointed out, the board found this case to be consistent. Some of the highlights of our discussion were, given the close proximity to some large employers, we felt that this request could potentially fill a gap by providing some additional business services that might be undermet today. Also, there's some unique site constraints given this location that really limits what could be developed. The board felt that given those constraints, this request really offered probably the best fit for what could be built in that area. There were some concerns regarding building height that were expressed in our discussions. Several of our members mentioned that they actually drove by during the balloon test and felt that seeing the balloons up really helped them visualize where the top of the building would be. And by seeing that, kind of helped to alleviate some of those concerns around height. But overall, we found the request to be consistent by a vote of 5-0.
Questions? Thank you.
So this part's never easy. It's not as complicated as the Alston Activity Center concept plan, but you have to take a look at all the policies in the Imagine Cary Community Plan. It's not as simple as it used to be with a land use plan that was parcel-based. So the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that this, while it would not be the first 7-story building in Weston, it's the first one that would be this close. It's 50-foot streetscape, then a requirement for a 10-foot setback off the streetscape. But most of the existing buildings are on much larger parcels, and they're set back away from the road. But this is one of those vacant parcels that's left in this almost 1,000 acre, PDD. There's 900 acres, and there's only about 30 acres left, and this is one of the few remaining parcels. So any development here is going to be a little bit tricky and going to need to be pulled up closer to the road than some of the existing buildings. But this building at this height is going to create a change. It's going to look different. But with infill, sometimes you need that added height, and putting in structured parking is one of the ways to offset that, and they have offered the structured parking. Ultimately, what staff looked at is whether or not this was consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan, Growth Framework Map, and that mixed-use campus vision. And ultimately, we did find that even though we recognized there were a number of concerns, that this was consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan, and therefore staff recommended approval of the request. So this is the full list of the zoning conditions that were offered by the applicant, which staff found could be enforced. And this concludes our presentation. The applicant is present, and I'm available for your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Grannon. Questions or comments?
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify. These are the ones that we're satisfied that are enforceable.
Correct.
So I have a quick question regarding something that was raised tonight at the Public Speaks Out. With the sidewalks on Weston, have y'all looked at that to see, can the sidewalk be installed without taking out some of those signature trees along there?
That is an excellent question. They will have to submit a tree survey with the development plan. If they have champion trees, they're going to need to go to a quasi-judicial, public hearing if they've got champion trees that are going to be removed. But we'll look for the sidewalk to meander as much as possible. And we'll look for the sidewalk to partially be in the right-of-way as well. So there is some right-of-way that doesn't have significant trees in it. But that is something that we'll evaluate carefully at the development plan stage.
Okay, and when they put in the turn lane, the buffer will be 50 feet back from that turn lane.
Correct.
It doesn't
The
feed into
the
buffer.
50 feet is based on the property lines. So they would have to provide it on their property, not within right-of-way.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Please.
Yeah, I had a comment. So the height was set in 1984. Is that, did I hear that correctly? When the people-
Correct.
And for a 35-year-old standard, no one envisioned MetLife either, right? And I think it's, obviously we're looking at something that was so long ago, no one envisioned this. Probably just envisioned all office completely because that was the style back then, and it's changed. So I can see that the need to change. I'd seen pictures from the balloon test, and there were some trees that had been removed since the balloon test. Is that what I read correctly? That somebody, not on this site, but it may be in some other place, that,
Say that again?
that there's some trees it was an accidental tree removal.
Yeah, I heard somebody say that there were trees that were removed, but I don't know what that was about.
It was between a residence and.
The
There-
point is.
There may have,
Blue test.
yeah, not in relation to the balloon test, but there was a development project that had some deficiencies in their buffer, which as soon as the weather cools off a little bit more consistently, they're going to enhance that as part of the Red Storm project. They had some gaps in their perimeter buffer on the southern side.
Okay.
So our development compliance team is on top of that, and they're going to be enhancing that buffer to a type A standard.
Yeah, so there's nothing that's between, and I'm looking at a picture that was handed out, but there's no buffer between the house I'm seeing in the lower left-hand corner of this picture that was handed out, which you may have, I got the handout. Between that and the parking lot that's across the street, I'm trying to figure out if nothing was lost. Because I saw the balloon test and thought it was barely visible. Wasn't the balloon test at 100 feet?
That's correct.
The window was at
Yes.
100 feet, not at 90 feet. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I think it was, if there's nothing, this is not the Red Storm across the street.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Right, so
is.
that is where
Yes,
so
it's
that
across
was the
West End.
concern.
Yeah, we've looked at
Okay, that was the one. It looked familiar, very familiar. Okay, I'm clear now. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I have comments.
So where
not
is
questions.
just another question. So where is the closest home, besides the one that's on Reedy Creek?
Sorry.
Where is the closest home if you?
Single-family detached is over 1,000
Thank you. That
feet from the subject property. I'll pull up a vicinity map for you.
This is
And
good.
so it's behind, it's on the other side of
Red Storm.
South of Red
Weston
Storm.
Parkway,
Correct.
and then behind Red Storm, and then you get to the closest home. Is that?
Yeah.
Do I have that
So,
right?
yeah, I looked at it on a map, like the Wake County
There it is.
GIS
There we
maps.
go.
There it is.
And from the edge of the 50-foot buffer to the back edge of the closest Wessex property, it appears from the GIS map that it's 525 feet. And I don't know what the setback is in Wessex, if it's 50 feet or 75, but essentially, from the back of one house to the back of the building, we're talking about, 500 and probably 75 feet, which is more than like a football field and a half length.
Almost two.
It's almost two.
And it crosses the
Depends
street,
if you count the end zone or
4-lane
not.
street.
Yeah, no end zones.
Yeah, if you don't count the end zone, it's basically two football fields. That's a really far distance. Like, I know people have this concern that the hotel resident or occupants are going to be looking in at the houses, but that's a really far distance, don't you think? To be looking in from 600 feet away, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly why I was bringing up, because when I looked on Google Maps, I was like, okay, so where is the closest and how far can you actually see from 90 feet up? And, by the way, it's over a 4-lane road and over another office.
Another development. Well, yeah, and I think
Office
some
development.
residents would be more like the parking would be in between, but that's what Ms. Grant is saying, is that they're going to beef up some tree plantings there in conjunction with that project. So, yeah, for some homes it would be over a building, but it's really, it's not like breathing down the neck of the houses. You know what I'm saying? Like it's still a good distance.
They're not, they're not abutting each other for sure. There's
It's not abutting.
There's a road and a office building in between.
Yeah, one of the speakers today mentioned that trees would be coming down in that buffer, but we've heard now from staff that trees will not be coming down.
Some might, with the road widening, there might
With
be
the
a
road
little bit,
widening.
yes.
But that
And-
50 feet, you're going to be putting,
Yeah,
they'll
that's
put
where,
tree
right,
protection
that's where
around.
we're going to expect them to enhance that and not, cut it down and replant it.
Okay. And then we have another group of citizens who review our quasi-judicial matters now, which we're happy about since we don't like doing that. So there'll be another group of citizens that will review any variances off of the required set plan.
Right, if there's a change in a zoning condition, it would have to come back to you.
But the site plan,
But if at the site plan, there's something that's a modification to an LDO standard, then that could go to the zoning board of adjustment.
including the trees,
Right,
including
if it's a
champion
champion tree.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's see here. I wanted to just mention a concern by someone that the hotel would not be walkable to other amenities. Old Reedy Creek Road is the entrance point for a lot of people to walk toward Umstead, into Umstead. So I do think that people in this hotel would not only be able to get to that amenity, the Umstead Park, but we have office buildings that are nearby that I think are amenity, and I don't think the walk is that far down to Arboretum. I don't know the distance, but it seems like it actually is a very walkable location within Weston. So that does not have a concern for me. I looked through this as thoroughly as I could. I looked to see whether it was consistent with the Cary Community Plan. I believe it's consistent with the Cary Community Plan. So I will be voting in support of it.
When you talk about walkability, and they added the buffer and the sidewalk that wasn't in the original PDD on Winstead Drive, is that correct?
Correct, there was no buffer requirement on Winstead.
And am I correct, is that the old MCI building that's beside, is that the big building? The big one to the Weston 2, I guess, that big one, is that the old MCI building?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm dating myself.
Weston
No, it's
one.
not. It's not.
Weston
I've
1 and
seen those.
2.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's somewhere further down. It's a different place.
Yeah.
But those offices, obviously, to have something walkability to a hotel for an option to have either a meeting or to eat. I mean, I see some walkability here to neighboring businesses as well as these other loft apartments. So I don't know what else you're looking for in walkability. It's walkable.
Other comments?
So I did measure it. Oh, I'm sorry, were you going to?
No, you're fine.
I had measured it, and from Winstead to the Arboretum is 0.8 miles.
Oh,
so it is certainly walkable, depending on how you define walkable. One of the concerns I had, and I'm still struggling with, and I'll wait until there's a motion on the table, is we already have 5 hotels that have been zoned for within this basically 0.8 mile area. We have 3 that are built and 2 that are approved, right? So we have 5, and I don't know how many rooms that will be, but the 2 daily hotels that have been approved right in Harrison as well. And so that combination of so many hotels in one area concerns me, right? That's a bit of a concern. Now, you could say, of course, that those other 2 hotels aren't there, but they're zoned and approved. So they could be there, they could be started tomorrow and be built. And that many hotels in one place, that does concern me. I don't have a problem with the height of it any longer. I'm pleased that the applicant has done a lot of work and listened to a number of citizens. We just recently approved a office building right next to a residential. So I don't have as much of consternation around that, but that does concern me because some people have said, well, those 2 hotels may never come. Well, they might not, but they might also start building tomorrow, right? And that does make me think.
Mr. Yerhoff.
Well, I've had, it's okay.
Well, I was going to ask, okay, follow up with Lori on a question, Ms. Bush.
Sorry.
Get a follow-up on that. So, but the concern about number of hotels, are you concerned about there just being too many, or the viability? Like you're worried, like when we get too many grocery stores, they close up. What would be your
Yes.
concern?
Yes, both.
So.
Because we try to have a, diverse set of types of
Okay.
businesses. And, obviously this is at the corner of a big interchange, right? But I just think that, 6 is kind of overpowering. And I wasn't, I was on the edge of the extra 2.
Okay.
So going one more is just.
So let me throw a number in, because I think we were just at the Greater Raleigh Convention and Visitors Bureau and looked at the number, the area vacancy rate, or the occupancy rate, I guess I should say, even though we heard somebody throw out that the developer said 60 to 65% is what they estimated. I think they were being conservative because we have the highest occupancy rate. We're above the state average. We're above the national average. We're in the high 80s on occupancy rate. So, and as we grow, that's why viability doesn't bother me. I can see why grocery stores board up, because I think they've overdone it. But you're also putting the burden on the developer to know what the market is, rather than us to sit around the table and figure out the market is. But the numbers that I've seen for Wake County, it's just going up and up and up on hotel occupancy rates. If they overbuild, it's their own problem. But I think it may draw some from another place, but I just don't see a problem with viability of a hotel when we have such high occupancy rates. It's my observation.
Can I follow up on that? Is that okay? Well, I mean, it's just one thing that I don't think we thought to explore was the ratio between the amount of office space and the amount of hotel rooms. I mean, we have a lot of office space around here. So, it justifies having more hotels when you have so many office buildings nearby. I mean, just anecdotally, my colleague was in from California this week, and I asked him where he was staying, and he's staying up in Raleigh because the Embassy Suites was filled. So, it's, I agree with you. We don't know what the impact of having the 2 additional hotels, but I think there's definitely capacity for the hotels here.
Mr. Yarrow.
No more follow-up. I've had concerns about this one right from the get-go, and most of them have been very positively addressed by the applicant, and I thank the applicant for doing that. I also thank all of the neighbors who come to speak and who have emailed us incessantly over the past few months. Their comments, both pro and con, have been very helpful in my deliberation, that's for sure. But I still have one concern that still remains, and that's very simply the height. An 80% increase over the currently allowed maximum just strikes me as too much. I know we have MetLife, which is 100 feet or a little bit more, I guess, but the buildings, as Mrs. Grannon mentioned in her staff report, are considerably farther set back from the road, not plopped right up against Weston Parkway. And I know the Cary Community Plan calls for 3 to 7 stories in this area, but that doesn't mean 7 stories everywhere in this area. I think 3 is appropriate in some places, 7 are appropriate in others. And there may be places in Weston where additional 6, 7, even higher story buildings are appropriate, but I don't think this site is one of them. Weston eventually is going to redevelop. I mean, there's no question about that. But I think we need to be careful in this Weston area. It's one of our premier Cary neighborhoods. There's no question about it. And I think we need to be careful that we don't change the character. And I just see this as a first step in changing the character of Weston, or setting some precedent in the future. So I have trouble with that height. And I had it from the beginning, and 100 feet, 90 feet, not much of a difference. Still have a problem.
Other questions, comments?
This kind of always reminds me of the same discussion we have every time somebody wants to build a building at Regency. You know, originally designed as a predominantly office park. Same thing that we have here in Weston, originally designed predominantly an office park. And somewhere along the way, decades ago, an applicant came to us and said, hey, I want to build residential. That'll be cool, right? And the council's approved rezonings and zone parcels residential, whether it's single family or apartments or whatever. And because at that time, there wasn't that huge demand for office, you know, the demand was residential. And now the last 10 years or so, now that we are in demand for office and people want to build office buildings or other commercial uses or hotels in the area, those residents who weren't originally planned to be there, now they don't want to see the continuation and the growth and the evolution of the office park. This one hasn't been an easy one for me. It really hasn't. I can sympathize with some of the concerns that have been expressed. I've tried to put myself in the residents' shoes. I also try to put myself in the business owners or the businesses' shoes that live all throughout here. It's, you know, rezonings are never easy. It's that balance of interest, and you try to listen to everybody and bring everybody together and try to work on something that hopefully most everybody can be satisfied with. And like has happened in Regency over the years, and I think in here and some other projects throughout here, I think we've done a pretty good job. I mean, you're never going to solve every concern. You're never going to address every issue. Some people are going to be, just as we've seen with the email, some people are totally fine with this project. Some people are not. I agree with Mr. Urha's, I think it was Mr. Urha's comment that, you know, Weston's going to continue to evolve and change and redevelop, and it's right now still predominantly a suburban office park, you know, lots of 2-story, 3-story type buildings set back. That's not going to stay that way forever. New companies are going to come in, or companies are going to leave, new companies come in, buildings are going to get bought, bulldozed, redeveloped higher, taller. The demand is here. And this might be that first domino on this side of Weston Parkway, but it's not going to be the last. It's just not. When there's 5- and 6-story buildings around it, I don't know that 7 is entirely out of place. When this project first came to us, when they wanted to go into the buffer on Weston Parkway, I kind of felt, we all felt like it was DOA, you know, was not going to get approved. And there's a reason why this thing has taken from March of 2018 to October of 2019 to finally come to us for a decision. And I think that's because of all the work between the community and the neighbors and our staff and the applicant and everybody who have tried to work together. And I applaud everybody for that. Same thing with the Harrison hotels. There's a reason that that project took 3 years to finally come back to us for a decision, and all the work and the effort that went into that to try to be a good neighbor. Somebody earlier mentioned the Arboretum, you know.
We were on PNC
Yeah,
together then.
we all remember how controversial that project was. I mean, the neighborhood was almost a heck, I don't want to say hell, but I'll say hell.
He's raising his hand.
No. But, you know, you look at it today,
Well, the first proposal for Arboretum was
a hotel.
Yeah, the Umstead one
The
across the
Umstead was
street.
supposed to be built on the Arboretum
Yep.
site, and the neighbors in Wessex were concerned about having the tall building right next to their yards. And in that case, we agreed. We felt like, hey, it's right on top of the yards.
So, but I think if you look at the Arboretum today, and a lot of the people I've spoken with, you know, who live in Wessex, it's a pretty good neighbor, you know. I wish it had a few more viable shops and restaurants and stuff in it, but again, the whole area is still growing and evolving. You talk about the need for hotels, and is this too many? You know, I don't know. I'm not a hotelier. I haven't done the market study. I'm not the person that's getting ready to dump tens of millions of dollars on a project. But if I was, I'm pretty sure I'd do that market study and analysis to make sure it would be viable before I did it.
And that's probably what the grocery store people thought too.
Well, some grocery stores go out of business not because there's not the need, it's because they don't keep up with what people want in the evolving, changing way grocery stores. I mean, everybody here is, how often do we hear, we have too many grocery stores, but everybody is clamoring for Wegmans?
Well, that's not
Or
a
Trader
grocery
Joe's.
store.
Well, they
Spoken to it by a guy who never.
You
been
know,
to a
so
Wegmans.
it's what people want and change. And in business and everything, you've got to adapt and evolve, and you've got to change, or else you will go out of business. So I look at all the property across on the other side of Harrison Avenue, that there's a couple few homes there, and it's just grass, you know? We know that's going to redevelop one day, or develop. It's going to become density. It's going to become commercial. It's going to become office. We've seen the growth in SaaS, which is great. We love it. You know, thank God for SaaS. MetLife. At the end of the day, for me, does the use make sense, and has the applicant done what they can to address the majority of concerns? And to me, the answer to both those questions is yes.
Mr. Smith, anything to add?
No, I think most of it said. I think, Mr. Yerha, when this first started, what was going through my mind is that that whole change and all that dynamics. And actually, one of the things this afternoon, seeing this photograph, I just don't see that impact now. I actually like this. It gave me more comfort that this is not some, size 10 foot in a size 7 shoe. I think it makes sense here. It looks good. So this is a great graphic. I really appreciate that. And, when you brought up Regency, we approved a 10 or 11-story hotel there, and it just never happened yet. So we'll probably gonna have to live through that one in a couple of years on that end. Now, that was a little farther away. It was much more up on Tryon, but it's part of the Regency thing there. I think, vertical is going to become part of Cary. I think it's our mission, just as Ed said in that concern, that we make sure it happens not in a happenstance way. And so anything else I'd say would be repeating some of the things that were said here already. And that is, I think, the diligence here for well over a year, and the fact that our citizen committee with the P&Z looked at it, and from a different set of eyes, I think there's a lot to be said for this, and I think we're protecting the community. I just don't see this being the first step in something different. I think it's one of the first steps in how we're going to have to look at things through this sheer volume of growth that's coming to that area. As long as we do it smart, I think we're going to be okay.
And a lot of great discussion. The only thing I would add is I know I received a couple of emails or more that said that this was a done deal, and I can assure you that is never the case. In fact, I've changed my mind 3-4 times since Monday, twice today.
I witnessed all of it.
Talking with Sean, twice today. So that's how difficult this decision is. I sent staff over a dozen questions, which I shared with council,
Yeah, I did
to
too.
research everything I could possibly think of if I were a resident that I would want to know, knowing what I know, especially about traffic. Having been in simulations, I can tell you that if nothing else happened, traffic would increase because of background traffic. So you're going to have traffic. It's going to get worse. We're going to have to address traffic issues as they come in the future, but traffic will happen. Height. Ken George pointed out perfectly, in 1984, this thing was planned. That's a long time ago. Some of these buildings are about that old. They're going to come in. To be viable, they have to redevelop. To keep their clients, they're going to have to redevelop. And as Ed pointed out, it's critical how we view those. So we have to be very, very careful. And so that's what I was struggling with all week, It was a 51-49, which Jack says all the time for me. But it comes down to, I think, what you said. For me, is it the appropriate use? Because I think we're going to see some height. I think we're going to see some intensity. And I think we're going to see that as we see the redevelopment of Weston. And we have to take it one at a time and review it one at a time. But I think that this proposal has done a lot to protect a lot of concerns. Does it match all the concerns I have? No. Is it appropriate for the site? Yes, for me. So that's where I am. So I think everybody said their piece. I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the statement of consistencies attached to this motion document and rezoning 18 REZ02 Western PDD Amendment Tract O&I-2A.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion.
No, I just want to thank my council colleagues for giving, I know that we've all thought about this individually, and everyone giving their own thoughts, experience. You certainly have a lot of experience at this table, and your reasoning of how you get to this is really helpful. And so thank you for doing that.
Anybody else? I don't think this is unanimous, so we need a show of hands. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you, Ms. Granite.
Thank you.
We now move to our second discussion item, item 6.2, Environmental Advisory Board, Carbon Reduction Recommendation. Special Projects Director Dana Widmar is going to present this item, and council may take action.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am pleased to present to you the Environmental Advisory Board's Carbon Reduction Recommendations. Before we discuss the recommendations, I'd like to highlight a few other related ongoing activities, including the town's Strategic Energy Action Plan and related statewide collaborative efforts. Following the recommendations, staff would like to receive your feedback. As you know, Council adopted the town's Strategic Energy Action Plan in 2012, with goals to reduce energy use on town-owned facilities. The plan was updated in 2015 to measure progress, including savings of both money and energy. Town-wide LED street lighting is one example of the actions resulting from that plan. The town also participates in multiple state-level collaborative efforts regarding energy use and carbon reduction, including the city's initiative, as well as a stakeholders group formed regarding the Governor's Executive Order 80. In addition to collaboration with Duke Energy, who recently announced an electric generation goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Taking a cue from the culture change at the town, in 2018, the EAB formed a book club to read and discuss the best-selling book, Drawdown. One EAB member said, "Reading and discussing Drawdown with my EAB colleagues was the best thing I did all year." Collectively, they were inspired to develop actionable recommendations which envision Cary as a municipal leader in carbon reduction. These are town-wide recommendations going a step beyond just town-owned facilities, including carbon reduction goals of 25% by 2025 and 100% by 2040. The actionable steps are categorized into 7 themes, which I'll get into now. The first recommended action area includes development of a community-wide baseline with metrics that are updated every 3 to 5 years. The second area relates to buildings, including town-owned facilities, new construction, and renewable energy. The third recommended action area is transportation, including walkability, bikeability, transit, and zero-emission vehicle infrastructure, all areas that the town is proactively working to advance. The fourth area is green infrastructure, which is directly related to current work efforts regarding trees, open space, and stormwater, and discusses opportunities to reestablish forested areas. The fifth recommended action area is regarding agricultural and food waste. The last 2 areas relate to awareness and collaboration among our citizens, businesses, and other municipal partners. Given that overview, we look forward to your feedback.
Comments, questions?
I'd like to ask the EAB representative what his thoughts are, because he was part of that book club.
I have nothing to add. I think we summarized it well. I believe that, as we chat in our meetings, we talk about being bold and being smart and being a leader. And I freely admit I'm probably more in the end of wanting to be the leader, but I've got one of the greatest boards surrounded by some of the smartest people with a lot of common sense that know what we're doing. Part of this action as we go through this with the staff is that we have worked with the staff, and we intend to have very frequent updates so that it isn't something we've kicked the can down the road. We say, oh, we've given it to staff. Wash our hands and we go away. So you will be getting a lot more ongoing information on all of those 7 steps that we were talking to. If you want to go into more of that detail tonight, feel free to. But I think the message to the community is we have a active and vibrant group, and we have a staff committed to that, and I believe we have the council here in full support of what we're doing there. And I just encourage us to, in a uniform way, get the message to the staff that we support this recommendation. I don't know if that answers it or not.
Answered
No,
my
that's
questions.
great. Yeah.
That was good.
I think one of the things I'm excited about the EAB's impact on staff is that even for those of you wondering why we have matching cups here, we've gone 0 waste behind the scenes now. So we, except for, we now have matching cups, mostly. Behind the scenes because the impact that you all have made. The rest of town staff think about that. Now we have a dishwasher, and we have all, we don't throw away our plates anymore. We're using, some of your guidance, some of your role modeling is hitting all of staff, and they're thinking about how they can do better individually. And I really thank the EAB leadership, our sustainability manager, Emily Barrett, for your leadership in creating something quite, I don't know, kind of like a Pied Piper you've been. People are following along the way, and I think there's a lot of good here. So I thank the EAB and the citizens and Jack for participating.
I'd just like to follow up on the one thing that Lori said, and that is, as we kind of pat ourselves on the back and brag, the other advantage that we're starting to see, or the other success we're starting to see, is how our business community is embracing this. Just this past week at MetLife, we had the big sustainability initiative, and that was well attended. And earlier when we started this meeting, Mr. Siegel talked about this being the week of the SAS Championship, and one of the opening events of that is a function at SAS on Tuesday night, and that was all the 0 waste type of concept. It was all compostable, and we were all using different utensils, different mechanisms, which you would never see before. So now you have your 2 large corporations. You got MetLife and you got SAS, and they're not giving lip service anymore. They're stepping up, and we're seeing that spill over to all of the organizations. I think that's kind of neat and kind of competitive. So, once it gets out that they're doing it, now we've got, we have initiatives at John Deere and all of the above. So we, as a community, can stand proud that not only are our citizens getting more involved, but now we're starting to see real and meaningful impact in our business community. That says volumes. Speaks volumes.
So would you like to follow that up with a motion?
Sorry. Can we make some comments?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, we don't have to.
No,
but.
absolutely.
Okay.
I don't want to cut anybody off.
Okay. Well, first of all, I found the report to be very affirming because a lot of the things that they recommended we're already doing. So that's very affirming. I would like us to go ahead and do that official vote of support because there are a lot of elements in here that we can weave easily into other initiatives that we're doing. For example, we've been talking about some standards and design ideas for downtown, having green rooftops. as a signature element of our downtown would be something that would set us apart from other communities and would help us accomplish our environmental goals. I remember meeting with a group of tree folks about a year ago, and they were talking about the fact that we don't really advocate for replanting standards for developers, replanting native species. And that was mentioned in here. I mean, I think that's something that we want to really drill in on. I had no idea, but since then I've had a lot of people who understand the environment much better than I do explain to me why it's so bad to have non-native species planted. So I think that's great. And then just on Tuesday night, I was at an event with a lot of other people, and Lee Williams was talking about the idea of us going and looking into curbside composting. Now, I know we have a big hard time with getting our recycling stream clean, so that might be, just completely insurmountable, but we should definitely be looking at other communities that have embarked on this and see what the logistics are, what's involved with that, because what a lot of people don't realize is that some of the worst gases that come off of our landfills are generated by food waste. And so, one of the things in here is to reduce food waste.
Just for the record, our last meeting was almost identical to what you just said. Right? Somebody's out there, right? So, look, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendations after Ken says something.
Well, I would just say that I applaud that, this is a wonderful step. I applaud this. I have been on this green kick and energy reduction kick in my house for years. I was telling somebody the other day that I decided that, based on hearing from some people from our sister city in France and how precious water is, and I lay out the challenge to people when you get ready to wash your face or shave or whatever in the morning, the first water that comes out is cold. So I now have a cup by my sink, and I fill it full of hot water while it's still cold and take it and use it to drink rather than waiting for it to go down the drain to get hot water to shave with. And I think that's just simply from having worked with people through our Sister Cities program that know that they catch their water in their sink after washing their lettuce to go water their plants. Who does that? I mean, this is what we need to be about, besides Lori. Who does that? And
Me, I do.
Madame Lori. So I think it's important that we adopt this. And I also am thinking back to some comments made earlier that I made maybe 3.5 years ago. If we'd voted and adopted this 4 years ago, wouldn't we have a parking deck with solar collectors on the top that was providing all the energy for the lighting in the parking deck? And I'm wondering, as we go forward to the next parking deck and the next parking deck, that we do things where we've got that opportunity instead of that sea of concrete on the top to be able to have what McDonald's does in Cary, and that's have solar collectors to keep your cars in the shade and provide power to light the parking deck. So I think those are things that I'd like to see going forward as we reduce the footprint. And I love what's been said, and I hope we can continue to make progress in those areas.
Okay.
So,
anyone else? Mr. Smith?
I made the motion that we accept the AV recommendation.
There's a motion to
Second.
accept and a second. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank
you.
Ms. Whitmore. We're now ready to go in closed session. I'll recognize Mayor Pro Tem Bush for the closed session motion.
Pursuant to GS 140. Music's on already. And are retained by the town in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorneys and the town, and among other things, we expect to receive advice concerning the following lawsuits in regards to Memento Mori LLC case 1804661-5-DMW and National Prescription Opioid Litigation MDL number 2804 ND Ohio, and to prevent the disclosure of information that is made privileged or confidential by GS 143 31810E.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and we're going into closed session. We'll reconvene our council meeting, and our business has been completed. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, and we're adjourned. Thank you.
Jack, you're the fastest adjourning motion guy.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.